welcome you all to the informative lecture on post-colonial theory today, issues, texts, and readings. On behalf of the institution, I convey my regards to the speaker of the day, Dr. Jaydeep Chakrabarty, Department of English, S.N.D.T. I'm so sorry, Department of English, Assam University, being an alumna of my university, sorry. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and to grace this occasion. Before, yes. Okay. So before we proceed this program, I would request to play the university song. Before, yes. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah. So we will be recording today's lecture, and at the same time, it is being live telecasted on YouTube. The forum will be open for question and answers at the end of Dr. Chakrabarty's talk. In case you have any questions, please type it out in the chat box. Thank you. Today's lecture is organized under the guidance of Dr. Pandurang Barkhale, Head of the English Department, S.N.D.T. Women's University, Mumbai. I now invite Sir to kindly deliver the welcome speech. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Afrin. And I just slightly would like to correct that I am head of the department, not of S.N.D.T. Women's University. It is S.N.D.T. College of Arts and S.C.B. College of Commerce and Science for Women. So just correct it a bit. Okay. So in the beginning, I would like to heartily welcome all of you to this expert lecture on post-colonial theory today, issues, text, and readings by Dr. Jaydeep Chakrabarty. I request everyone to mute, please. Let me do the needful. Yeah. On behalf of our principal, Dr. Rajendra Ji Gurau, who could not make it for today's program because he recently lost his nephew and he had to rush to his hometown for his rituals. That's really unfortunate thing. So we really miss sir here, but he has conveyed his best wishes to this program. I also thank Dr. Jaydeep Chakrabarty, who has been a real expert in this field. His information about him would be read by Ms. Aroshi soon. I really thank him for accepting this invitation, for gracing this occasion and enlightening our students. He's been very busy. He has conveyed that to me, but when I requested, he so diligently said yes, and I really loved that. We have also had sir for one national workshop on competitive exams. There, I really became a fan of his delivery of his ideas, and perhaps that's the reason why he's here for second time with us. And post-colonial theory is his special area, and that you're going to witness during his speech. Friends, why this lecture has been organized for our students, because post-colonial theory is a topic that is related to English literature students. In our DC core group, I just announced that this program is compulsory for all DC English students. The reason is very simple, that we have post-colonial theory in our first year BA syllabus, where it is just introduced at initial level. In your paper called, in first year BA students, in first semester, there is a paper called Basic Concepts or Exploring Literary Studies. There, this term is introduced at knee-deep level. Then, in TYBA, you have a full paper on post-colonial studies. And this topic goes on even for your research in MPhil, PhD. There can be MPhil or there can be PhD in post-colonial studies. Friends, what is post-colonial studies or what is post-colonial theory? That sir would be talking with authority at length. That area I would not stress past. But what is post-colonial and what is post in that? Even that he would be talking about that as well. I would just use a simple analogy. How was the world before COVID, and how would be the world before after COVID? Even there are a lot of deliberations and debates even about that as well. But if I use this analogy, how was the world in pre-colonial stage and how it became in post-colonial? There is a vast difference. The lifestyle across the globe changed drastically. In the same manner, if we relate literature with life, then literature also changed. And organizing such kind of expert lecture in S.N.D.T Women's University, what Afrin said, yes, we are a part of S.N.D.T Women's University, no doubt about that. And S.N.D.T College, which is specially given to the cause of the upliftment or empowerment of women. In the post-colonial critic, post-structural post-colonial critic, Gayatri Chakrabarty Spivak says, women are doubly colonized in her essay called Can the Subaltern Speak? So if that is the case, then I think in women's university or women's college, such kind of discussions, such kind of debate or expert sessions are most needed. I really welcome the students and faculties from all colleges and universities that have joined us today. We have students from DC English, S.N.D.T Women's College. We have students from KJ Somaiya College of Arts, Commerce, Science, Vidya Vihar, Ghatkopar. We also have students from MD Shah College, Malad, and a few research scholars from Assam University have also joined us. So friends, this lecture does not just remain a lecture, but it's almost a national level session, because we have a speaker from Assam and the participants from Assam have also joined us. So with this, I heartily welcome all the delegates, and I hand it over to Afrin to continue with her proceedings. Over to you, Afrin.
Thank you so much, sir. One second. Okay. Yeah. So now I invite Ms. Arushi Suvarna, a student of S5BA, to kindly deliver the introduction. Over to you, Arushi.
Thank you. Amy Lowell once said, books are the quintessence of our lives, and as literature students, we all know how valuable books are to us. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to this lecture. I'm Arushi Suvarna, and I'm here to introduce you to the man of the hour. Dr. Jaydeep Chakrabarty is an assistant professor in the Department of English, Assam University. Prior to joining Assam University, Dr. Chakrabarty worked as a UGC Junior Research Fellow in the Department of English, the Brugge University. He has written his doctoral dissertation on critical theory and post-colonial literatures. The title of the dissertation being Culture and the Canon, Edward Said and the Great Tradition. He has taught postgraduate classes in English for 17 years now and has guided PhD and MPhil researches in English studies for almost a decade. His areas of interest include critical theory, Commonwealth and post-colonial literatures, men's studies, and queer studies. Some important books written by him include Postcolonialism, Canosity and Culture, Essays in Memory of Edward Said, The English Department, Essays in Literature and Cultural Studies, Edward Said and the Great Tradition, The English Literary Canon, Books Edited, Bookside Musings, a selection of poems and short stories, and McWalway's Ghost, English Studies in Post-Globalized World. Besides, there are several publications in the university and college journals of a reputed as well book chapters. I welcome you, Dr. Chakrabarty, to this lecture. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Arushi. Before we begin, I would like to add upon something. So, in the words of T.S. Eliot, for last year's words belong to last year's language, and next year's words await another one. I now request the Honorable Speaker to address the gathering and cast the light of his knowledge upon us. His comments are quintessential for the students who wants to explore the area of post-colonial literature. Sir, we would be delighted with your expertise and knowledge in every way possible. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, madam. And it's a great pleasure for me to have been invited by all of you. And I'm really humbled by the nice words and everything that you have said about me. And again, thank you so much to Dr. Varkale, you and the other speaker who introduced me. And I'm indeed grateful to the institution. And above all, students, my dear students, and some of my scholars also in the last moment, I just informed that they may just join, for certain things. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are pretty audible.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, because
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is another this is
Yes,
another
yes.
anxiety. We talk about different kinds of anxieties. I was just telling the other day. Maybe I can begin here actually. We talk
Yes.
about, I say that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when people wrote books on literary figures, they did PhDs. So we had very blunt kind of titles. Let's say Mind and Art of Onita Desai, for example, or Wit and Wisdom of Raja Rao, that way. But for last 20 years or so, we have replaced those and then replace them with trajectories of belonging and then anxieties of affiliation and all those things, representation, politics of this, politics of that. So all these things again are closely related to post-colonial theory. And in fact, I was slightly thinking about what should I include when I talk about this, speak on this matter, etc. So, but then Dr. Berkeley actually has given a very wonderful keynote, for that, in a way, that after COVID, as we see that everything has changed. To use a phrase of W.B. Yeats from a poem which you may have read, I'm addressing the students, Easter 1916. All is changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Oh my God. Okay, so a terrible beauty is born. Yeats speaks about a terrible beauty in that poem, actually. So similarly, after COVID, you know, uh, after COVID or after Corona, I think there may be some disturbance from the fan. I will just switch it off, and that's better. I think, you know, after colonization, the world has changed to such an extent that for the next 50 or 100 years to come at least, the world will be divided between two hemispheres, continue to be divided. Earlier we used the terms like colonized and colonizer, or erstwhile colonies, or third world. Of late, increasingly, the preferred term has been global south, actually, including India and Africa in the main, and some all other countries which were, colonies of the British Empire. Now, since I'm addressing particularly my young friends, I mean students, and of course those who are, teachers, they already know these things. So, but then my things are already, only for students. Now, what is special about this post-colonial studies or post-colonial theory? Both are more or less the same thing. Studies include both theory and literature as a whole, post-colonial studies, and theory, the theoretical inputs. Now, generally, we tend to think that post-colonialism is a kind of resistance to colonialism or anti-colonialism. But that is actually not the fact. That is a part of post-colonialism, which we'll call, or generally call, nativism. That is absolute rejection of anything colonial, if that is possible at all. But people who believe in that, they propagate this. But post-colonialism, I think, is more about a balanced engagement with the phenomenon of colonialism. Yes, it is true. There have been terrible losses. And so far as the main figure Said is concerned, on whom I will speak today, later works mostly, because Orientalism, more or less, people know. So far as Said is concerned, probably it is more about losses only. But then there are gains also. And if we look at the later works of Said, it is clear that he is mindful of the gains. It is like another paper, translation, if you have it in your course, or later you may have. People who are traditionalists, they only talk about loss in translation. They see loss everywhere, that the meaning of the original is lost and all that. But that is not the correct approach. Sometimes there are gains in translation. Many things which are underwritten in the original texts become more meaningful, more elaborated in the translated version. And that is how, for example, we have this wonderful introduction to deconstruction is Gayatri Chakrabarty Spivak's introduction to Derrida's De la Grammatology. That was translator's preface. So that was not there in Derrida, and most people after that book have learned deconstruction by reading not so much Derrida's text, but the translator's preface. And of course, without this translation, deconstruction would not have been a popular word in America and all over the world. It just happened to come at the appropriate moment. Otherwise, Derrida would have remained a more or less a kind of French intellectual, and it is Derrida's overarching fame which led to the further popularization of even his other French contemporaries like Pierre Bourdieu, Michel Foucault, and all this. Now, all these are related to Said actually. Now, coming to the main question, that is colonialism and what post-colonialism does. You have studied in schools about the effects of colonialism, the resistance to colonialism, led by mainly Gandhiji. As it was represented in our history, now things are again changing. Here again, I come to another issue about post-colonialism, which is representation. But anyway, we have read about it in our school. Gandhi, Nehru, Subhash Bose, and then Lala Lajpat Rai. Then from very important of the first generation, Bal Gangadhar Tilak from Maharashtra. So all these anti-colonial figures, they have written a lot, fought a lot, and all these things. And more or less, the issue of colonialism was more or less dead and gone. So by 1950s, at least by 1955, all the erstwhile colonies, more or less, they were independent, whether in India or Africa, politically independent from the British. And we had more or less, forgotten about them, in the sense that we studied them in history, but did not want to carry forward it in our discussion, everything. Now, in 1978, this very important book came up, Orientalism, by Edward Said, which once and for all placed colonialism at the center of all academic discussions, especially humanities and social sciences discussion. It is so powerful that even till now, many people, especially in the Western academy, are fighting this because it is also embarrassing for the West. Colonization, its memory, how, at least 2/3 of the globe or more than that were excoriated, fleeced, and tortured, exploited, all this by them. However, Said's work is very different from what, say, Gandhi did, Subhash Bose did, and all those things. Said looks at something different, very roots of colonialism and colonization. And there he finds that it is the roots are not so much economic or political as it is textual. And here we come to the core aspect of post-colonialism, like other theories, post-structuralism, feminism, and all that. So what is at stake is we need to find out, or rather we find that this colonization was more or less a textual affair also. That part we did not study in school. We mainly studied in school or say in college about colonialism as a primarily political, geographic, or economic encounter, colonizer and colonized, and those points remain, of course. But then how is it that a handful of Europeans were able to, keep under control such a huge population of the earth? That was not only by physical power, and that was by textual power, in brief. So for a very long time, according to Said, the West has been studying the people of the Orient, writing books about them, texts about them. It started, at least as early as Aeschylus. If you read Orientalism, the book is quite accessible. Then Aeschylus is the starting point. And then he spoke about Asians, Orientals, Homer. So they have a kind of, homogenizing tendency, generalizing tendency when they spoke about the Orient. And then also, secondly, they tried to romanticize the Orient. That is India, Arab, and all that. That these are places, exotic places, beautiful, possibilities of romance and all this. So those things for a long time have been generating a craving for the Oriental land in the minds of the people of West. And gradually it started being intensified, but the key moment of intensification was reached in the 18th century, which was, as you know, the age of enlightenment, age of reason, and all that. So then people very, very seriously, they started even calling themselves Orientalists, and they started studying the Orient. And then, according to Said, misrepresenting them. So till date, many people who again have not read Said, they are even proud to call themselves Orientalists. In Pune, actually, where I studied for my post-graduation, it's very, exciting for me to come back to Maharashtra because in a way it's a kind of homecoming for me. So in Pune, therefore, for example, there's this very famous research institution, Bhandarkar Institution of Oriental Research. So all this, so Said showed that all this kind of studies and researches on which Bhandarkar is based, that's just not origin. I mean, they are all actually pro-European. And we become happy. Oh, the Sahibs, they are studying our Mahabharatas, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad. Max Muller, for example, German Orientalist, wrote a lot of books on the East. And there is a series of, I think, around 30 books, sacred books of the East, translated either by Max Muller or by people working under him or with him, where from Rig Veda to Arabian Nights, all Oriental texts are, important Oriental texts are translated. Now, why do you do this? Why do you do this? That was the question nobody asked before Said. It was taken for granted, yes, they are interested in us, they like us, they want, though they colonized us, but some among them, they really love our culture and all that. So, and then But then Said showed that the aim was imperial from the very beginning. Yes, it is not that 100% of the Orientalist scholars were imperial, but knowingly or unknowingly they contributed to the game. Now, here actually we have to go to a little deeper root. That is Foucault. Foucault is very important for Said. Of course, Marx is, but Foucault more important. Foucault said something which is often misquoted in Indian academia. Foucault said power is knowledge. Many people misquote it as knowledge is power. Now, Foucault didn't say that. Knowledge is power was said by Bacon, the early 17th century and Shakespeare's contemporary rationalist philosopher, we can say. He's also a very important figure for English studies and also philosophy, who actually propelled the growth from deductive logic to inductive logic. Anyway, Bacon said knowledge is power. Which all, if you have knowledge, you are powerful. We also say, if you study well, then you will have good job and all those things. Foucault accepted it and then reversed it. That power is knowledge. That is, there is no knowledge which is free from politics. Now, to give you a telltale example, because post-colonialism is a highly political field, we need to deal with politics, but not party affiliations. I'm politically neutral. I don't belong to any ideology or any party, just for your understanding. Say, beginning with 2014 in India, many figures have become important, of whom we never heard the name, at least I did not. One is, for example, Dindayal Upadhyay. Now everywhere in Assam, there is a college named and all these things. So he's a very important figure now we get to know. But earlier we did not know. So earlier we mostly knew about Gandhis and Nehru. Or Subhash Bose, for example. He was there, but then outside the main thing. But now, or even during the same point of time, I did my schooling in Assam. So when I studied the books of Assam, I saw, the freedom movement. Things were written in such a way that there was almost no other figure except Gandhi and his followers. I respect and love Gandhi, by the way, above all. That is not what I'm going to say. But then I happened to visit Tripura, which was a Marxist state, and then my cousins were there. I was in class 8 or 9, and out of interest, I was reading their textbooks. Then I was surprised to find that so many Marxist figures, Marxist I know now, then exactly I was not, that way. Figures are there whose names are not there in our books, because Tripura was then a Marxist state. So they've highlighted the contribution of the Marxist people in Indian freedom movement, which was absent in Assam, which was more or less than Congress or AGP. AGP's national, I think, imagination was not very different from Congress. So that kind of differences were there. So this is one example, and there will be many other. But just so if you look around, you will see how with each regime, when there are changes in regimes with ideological differences, the knowledge base also gets changed. Certain figures of the past are buried under or pushed to the back burner, and then some other figures emerge who were never there. Now, I'm not saying, or Foucault is not saying, that the recent ones are representations and the earlier ones were the correct things. No, the earlier ones were also representations. And Dadan power projected certain people, which was convenient for them or ideologically suitable for them, but no longer for other people who replace them. So that way it will go on. I'm reminded of a novel, Mimic Man, but anyway, I'll come to that later. But anyway, so I think you have more or less understood what Foucault said. That is not knowledge is power, but rather power is knowledge. That is, whatever or whichever group is in power in a given society, in a given thing. Or for example, let us talk about the gender. Slightly broader example than political regime. So gender, all societies are more or less patriarchal today. So all the texts that you are prescribed, for example, are mostly by male authors, or say the freedom movements, the leaders. Just as Virginia Woolf wrote, we don't know about Shakespeare's sister, about only Shakespeare, or even Mrs. Shakespeare for that matter. So who are our central figures of independence? Say Gandhi, Nehru, and all the central figures, more or less, with few exceptions, are male figures. The same is the case with other parts of the world also. How many prime ministers till date, I mean, India had who were women? I think, if I'm not mistaken, only one. And then that way. So that is very important, since this is women's university and women's college. Now, and then this is one kind of understanding, but it is not that there were no female authors or female fighters. In fact, feminists allege that there were much more female authors than we can see in mainstream history, and they were submerged. Like for example, another instance from Maharashtra is the Dalit part, for example, how the Dalit people have been marginalized, not only in real life, but also in representation. So all these are important, and all these are related. Collectively, we call this political reading of literature, so of texts. That's not about those earlier, nicey things, oh, literature, love, beauty, my love is like a red rose and all that. We never said black rose, of course. So, but then Black Lives Matter. Why should there are black roses also in sport? So all these are political readings, your feminist reading, Dalit reading, Marxist reading. So all of them speak about a particular kind of marginalization. Say Marxist readings talk about how the quote-unquote lower class marginalized by upper classes. Feminism talks about how patriarchy marginalizes women. Queer theory, gay and lesbian studies, they speak about how men and women both combined marginalize the homosexual, who become the third gender, third sex, so on and so forth. Now, coming to Sai, they are the same thing, but the parameter is of colonization. And again, I say Foucault is a very important figure. That, and post-colonialism talks about how colonizers marginalized the colonized for a very long time, and then it is not that they marginalized, it is going on. Now, who is doing that? So according to Said and even Chomsky, is done by America. That is the message of the last part of Orientalism. It has, three parts: the scope of Orientalism, then Orientalist structures and restructures, and towards then Orientalism now. That is what the British and the French imperialists did in the 19th and early 20th century. America is doing now, even now, till now. And now and then now it is the only superpower in the world. Though China and others are trying to, but not yet in position. Now, from this book, Orientalism, there have been many offshoots also. That is why it is also important. I can, talk about, for example, travel studies, travel writing. It is actually an offshoot of Orientalism, where Said had just indicated how travelers from Europe also helped the Orientalist project. So travelers came and described India and Middle East and all these things, which raised interest in the mind of other Europeans to come, and more they came, and then they imposed themselves on us. I'm simplifying, actually. The thing is more complicated, but the lecture is to compressed one. So travel writing is one. Then again, ecological imperialism. Eco-criticism was there independently of post-colonialism, but Said's writings in Orientalism led to another subdiscipline, which was in a way, inaugurated by a person called Alfred Crosby, who said that one of the greatest impact of colonization was the harm on nature, nature. Okay, so that is ecological imperialism. All right. Now, I can give you one example, how colonialism changed or destroyed our ecosystem. I am from Assam. Assam was an agrarian society mainly devoted to paddy production. Tea is not that way, in indigenous cultivation. That is what many people do not know. So when the British, or in traditional language, Britishers, they came and they saw that there were tea plants and tea leaves in Assam, and it was a fertile soil for tea. So they, directly or indirectly, many things they did, especially in Upper Assam, they almost forcibly, made many cultivators to go for tea plantation, leaving out the original paddy thing, which is a staple food. So since then, forever, Assam has remained dependent on other states for while it's, tea is selling well, but then this basic thing was changed, basic pattern. The tea was here, but then it was not cultivated, or it was not, you know, produced industrially. The British actually inflicted these things. Now that is how the whole system changed, and not to talk about industrialization and all these things. And then similarly, another field that has come from side, it's a derivative from side is subaltern studies, which is again very important. Subaltern studies, which basically studies, you know, we can say colonies within colonies, but as well post-colonialism. Now here we have to take stock of a very important maybe lacuna of side also. So many people have found out many kind of lacunae, but all are not important. For example, people have taken him to task for not highlighting the women's issue in Orientalism, right? Women's issue is very important, but then everywhere everything cannot be done. And when he spoke about colonization of the globe, other parts, he included both men and all were colonized. But anyway, that is not so much an important thing. But there is one thing which is very important, especially for the Indian context, with which I started. That is it only about a loss or about gain also? For example, the fact that, this is women's college, so many women are studying, which is good. Now, how did it come to actually happen? Before the British, education was limited only to male, and that to upper class and upper caste males, mostly, at least in the medieval age. Yes, we talk about the ancient Vedic ages, those women sages, I know Ghosha, Apala, Vishwabara, and all those things, Gargi, Maitreyi, Lilavati, Khana, but then they are of the ancient age. In the medieval age, more or less with few exceptions, it was a male-dominated area, and also upper caste and then upper class male from Hindu and Muslim, both the communities. So in madrasas and tolls. So Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar's main contribution was, along with legalization of widow remarriage, this opening education for women. I'm not very sure, but I just I vaguely remember that there are parallel kind of movements in Maharashtra also. In fact, Calcutta and Pune, these were the main cultural centers of what we call the Indian Renaissance, Pune, Bombay combined. So, but then how did Vidyasagar feel encouraged to beat for women's education? It is because of this colonial intersection, many things were coming. But again, to counteract this, it is not that education were open to women abroad also. And even right to vote for women, I think, in Britain was given only in 1921. But this kind of crisscrossing of ideas, when you get shaken out of your complacency, the same with the widow burning case. Now, so that is why I think it's better to look at colonialism as a kind of exchange also. While, yeah, it is possibly true that the losses will outweigh the gains, but then gains are also there. Or, yeah, and a very important thing, for example, our Dalit community, they took to English as the kind of, bringing in freedom. In North India somewhere, in fact, there was a temple built by people of the Dalit community, and the goddess of the temple was the English goddess. Because English, it's a language which is alien to the upper caste also and the Dalits also. So in a way, both are alien from English. And then the upward mobility, because while British society and European and American societies were very, very racist, the caste paradigm as such was not there, though there may be some similarities. But then anyway, it helped liberation of the Dalits and the education and development of the women a lot. This very fact of colonization. Now, those aspects are missing in Orientalism side, and I'm not sure he was primarily writing about the Middle East. Now we come to the core point. Now, Said's frustration with continued imperialism and colonialism has come from his Palestinian background. He had lost his homeland to the Israelites. In the year 1947, India became independent, and in 1948, the Jews, who were again one of the worst victims of Second World War, Holocaust in Germany and all that, but they did not have any place. They were scattered all over the world. And in fact, the term diaspora has come from the scattering of the Jews. Of course, not this Second World War scattering, from the Old Testament days, dispersal and all. Jews were all over the world, Egypt and other places. So, but then they definitely started creating a land of their own, and that was Israel. Incidentally, Einstein was also a Jew, very talented people of the world. So your Freud, Karl Marx, Noam Chomsky, all these are incidentally Jews. I don't know whether it is incidental or there is something in the community, but again, that will be an Orientalist comment. Then something in the which produces so much of talents. Now, Einstein was offered the president's post of this newly formed state of Israel because he was the most important figure among the Jews then. And even now, one of the, perhaps the most brilliant person of the world who used 18% or some more of his brain. Though technically you will find in YouTube this girl is there who seems to use 20% of brain, or this voice there who is to, but then they have not contributed anything like Einstein did. But anyway, Einstein refused that. He said, I'm interested in my studies, not in that kind of power. Contra Foucault, or rather maybe establish him. He said that politics is for the present, but equations are forever. So you wanted to do your studies. But anyway, that's a different thing. Now, when the Jews came in the state of Israel and they settled there, which they claim is their original divine land given in the Bible. But the thing is that there are other peoples also there. And those are the Palestinians. And the Jews actually dispersed them, and that trouble is continuing till date. The Israel-Palestine attack and Said's major critical energy, which many people have not read, many people means within literature, that is devoted to this Palestine politics. And he says he accepts that yes, Jews were the victims of Hitler and all those things. But he says, because you have been victim of someone once, that does not give you the moral and ethical right to continue victimizing others. That is his position. And he says that exile, I saw it in your syllabus, exile is there. He said, yes, exile's fate is unfortunate, but most unfortunate it is to be exiles exile. So in his view, the Palestinians are exiles exile because they've been exiled by people who themselves have been exiles, that is the Jews. So from that background, and after, he was born in 1935, just imagine, in a house in Jerusalem. And after 1947, he could never visit that house. Towards the end of his life, I think around 91 or 94, he went back to Jerusalem just to attempt to enter that. It was not allowed because it was under Israeli position. In fact, he could not even enter that area. So that feeling. Now, what is British or European imperialism got to do with it? That is the question. And that is post-colonial theory now, which I believe. The thing is, it says that today, Israel, though actually technically part of Asia, but it has become a proxy West for the Palestinians and other Asians. That is, America is fighting the Islamic world, trying to keep it in control as a kind of. I'm not saying that this is the correct view, but then this is an important view. And then by and large, we see many things which corroborate to this. Just I think 2 months back, this war was on again, Israel and Palestine. And India was at a loss for a very long time, Indians rather, to which side will take to. But fortunately and thankfully, the stance that India government took is like side stance. We have accepted formally the rights of the Palestinians. But towards the later part of his life, sides shifted to, as per Chomsky's suggestion, two-nation theories, not two-nation, two people, one state kind of theory. Said yes, the claims of Jews also cannot be negated. but then let Jews and Palestinians be also there. So that way, I mean, in fact, I want to, continue a little more if that is possible, because the main thing, there are many other things, say 10 to 15 minutes. Uh, Barkale sir, is there time left?
No, 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 absolutely not, sir. You,
Oh,
you may take the time so that students can enjoy it longer and better.
okay, okay, thank you, sir.
We
Now,
are absolutely not in hurry.
okay, okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Now, so now I will come to the later books. More or less, we have covered Orientalism in one word. Orientalism is all about the European scholars, mainly British and French's, misrepresentation of Indians, Middle Eastern, and other people, either as saintly, ascetic, and all that, or as lazy, corrupt, effeminate, debauchees and all. And you will find that it is true till date if you watch movies from Hollywood about India. Now, Holy Smoke is a movie. Kate Winslet is there, for example. They're India figures. So whenever Hollywood movies show India or James Bond movies, you may have seen, what do they show? Generally, that India is fully crowded, a lot of poverty, beggars, and some Indian movies which also wants global attention, Western attention, they project these things. I think Slumdog Millionaire was the case. I think I said because I haven't watched that. To be candid, I have heard from others because there are so many things to read. I don't get often time to watch a full movie, but you may check. But Holy Smoke, I have watched. Now, why is this so? Because the Western people, they are happy to imagine that we are in a backdated world. We are lazy, we are all that. But then, following Said's argument, we can argue that it is true we have slums, but we have skyscrapers also, supercomputers also, so many developmental things. Those things are not shown in these movies. Dominic Lapierre, for example, wrote a very condemned book, The City of Joy on Calcutta, and all the wrong information, perhaps even without visiting Calcutta, he gave. Nutpal Datta has made a very strong criticism of that without reading Said, I think. Otherwise, you would have known Utpal Datta. He was an English graduate, by the way, and wrote a very good work on Shakespeare. Had he read Said, then his information would have been more, rich, richer, because then you would have known that what Dominic Lapierre was doing was not an individual case. It is there in the history of entire Western representation. Now I come to the one vexed question of that whether the post in postmodernism and the post in postcolonialism are the same. Actually, these are same, but with slight differences. In fact, in certain books, like Piaggio Golemari is a very good book on literary theory, postcolonialism is often showed as an offshoot of post-structuralism. Post-structuralism, Foucault is the main part that thing. Power is knowledge. That is what Said showed. Only Foucault showed the operations of power within Western society, and Said showed it vis-a-vis the Oriental society. Rather, Europe's operations of power, according to Foucault, had damaged so many people, including, say, women, the quote-unquote mad people, the homosexuals, and those are Foucault's project, medical gays and all that. Said took that idea and showed that how European power or European knowledge passed on as power has not only been damaging for the Europeans themselves, or weaker section of Europe, if we can say so, but it has been more damaging for the Oriental world. And then he has acknowledged it in Orientalism that basically it is a Foucauldian project. So our take-off point is that one thing is that the West misrepresented the East for a very long time. The second is that not misrepresented, but this misrepresentation is going on, and that has to be contested. That is why Said wrote this book and many others. And the third point is, the broader point is, power is knowledge, which is Foucauldian. So we need not believe anything we read or see. That is important. So we have to counter check things. And the worst part of it is today is found in WhatsApp and all. Sometimes I myself have become, a fool whenever information we get without cross-checking, we forward, just forward. There's an anxiety that if I don't forward, I will not exist. So one person said jokingly that I share, therefore I exist. Today, this is the motto. Just as Descartes said that I think, therefore I exist, cogito ergo sum. Today, our tendency, okay, I share, therefore I exist. That's why for a long time, I did not have WhatsApp. Now, for certain reasons, I've come back. Anyway, so with this take of points, and the last one, that you need not believe whatever is brought before you on the plate. You have to examine and scrutinize. That is critical reading. And specifically in Said's case, the later book which I'll talk about is Culture and Imperialism. There, he extends the points of view of Orientalism, and at the same time, as I've spoken about those allegations against Orientalism, he tries to mitigate those lacuna by including. And one major valid argument against Orientalism was that it showed only how West misrepresented the East. But then what about all these figures that we have named? For example, Gandhi, Nehru, Subhash Bose, or Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Lala Rajput Rai, Bipin Pal, all those figures, and Vivekananda is very important figure. They countered from Indian context, I'm saying, and some from African context, you may have read Chinua Achebe, who had started writing long before Orientalism. If I'm not mistaken, Things Fall Apart, which has become a global classic, was published in 1955. Or Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who much before Said, and I don't know, one of my scholars, the former scholars, if there is an expert on Ngugi wa Thiong'o. And then in 1969, for example, is it abolition of the English department, abolish the English department in African context. So, but then those figures are not mentioned by Said. How is it? And very importantly, Frantz Fanon, we call Fanon, is increasingly now becoming a figure who is as important as Said, if not more important. He wrote his major books again from 50s to 60s. More importantly, The Wretched of the Earth and Black Skins, White Masks. Now, these are not there in Orientalism. So Said wrote Culture and Imperialism, where, for example, Fanon is a major figure. Resistance and opposition is also included. Tagore is also there in Said's book, nationalism part. Nehru, Gandhi is also there. And this problem, as I had just, spoken about, our, how colonialism to a great extent benefited our women folk and then our Dalit community, albeit that colonizers did not want it to be so, but somehow we have, especially for this, reaped the benefit. So, that is, we had people oppressed by our own people, let alone colonizers. It is there in every society, of course, in different ways. So Said also takes note of the fact that after the colonizers have left, it is not that everything is hunky-dory, nicey in the colonies. We are, people in the colonies, people are exploited by their own people. So that is one meaning of neocolonialism, though not the prominent meaning. The prominent meaning of neocolonialism is the colonialism of America. The British and the French have gone, but now America is there, which is colonizing us economically. We have these outlets, even in the small town of Assam that I stay in. So, though not very small, but then by comparison to Pune and Bombay, it is smaller. But even here, there are inroads of KFC, McDonald's, and all these things are passed on in the name of globalization, which implies that all global people coming together, hugging each other, and very wonderful exchange. But no, theorists say, especially post-colonial theorists, that globalization is a misnomer. It is Americanization, or as some theorists have called it, McDonaldization of the world. And I know so many multinational companies, mostly American or other European nations. So this economic exploitation is going on, for which you don't need actual geographical colonization. You can do it through the GATT and other agreements. And right in the 60s, the president of Ghana, Nkrumah, had said that now neocolonialism of America is coming. And even before that, I don't know whether post-colonial theorists have mentioned it or not, 1942, Subhash Bose gave a radio speech. related to the British quitting India. There is said that the British Empire is already on the wane because the American Empire's ascendancy is there. Now, Bin Laden's attack on Twin Tower, on which also Said gave his view and many other theories. 2000, I was in Pune then actually. Now, this is actually also a resistance against neo-imperialism of America, but in a very dangerous resistance, such a resistance that, like we can say that the cure is more dangerous than the disease. Sometimes it happens with chemotherapy for cancer patients. The patient dies earlier from chemotherapy than he would have lived without that chemo. So that kind of resistance we can never support. It's inhumane. But anyway, the main point is you have to read or see against whatever is presented to you on the platter before you. That is critical reading. So that's why we say another thing. Earlier we used to say literacy is important. Now we say critical literacy is more important. Critical literacy is that you don't trust anything that you read in newspapers. And if you say 2 to 3 newspapers you take, you will see how the same issue has been represented differently. The Times of India, the Hindu, and all these things. So knowledge is not that way neutral. It serves different kinds of powers. The only way it can be countered is by the public's awareness of the operation of knowledge is power. Direct operation of power, you all understand. If we are, beaten by police, taken inside custody or curfew, these are understandable, and then it is easier to resist. This indirect, operations of power works through things like knowledge, things like culture. Now, in culture and imperialism, in addition to all these things, Said is contesting the idea that culture is a neutral thing. We generally do not relate politics with culture. We, for instance, say that the British, as a whole, the British rule was bad for us, but not so the British culture. We learned a lot from this. While I have indicated something like this, but here I'll say something else, that this very separation between power and culture is faulty, as much faulty or faultier than culture, power and knowledge. We cannot separate actually. So in culture and imperialism, Said shows how all major forms of Western culture, a song, music, literature, they have been supporting imperialism, making a case for imperialism, and legitimizing imperialism again for a very long time. Okay, so just as in Orientalism, he showed how the scholars of Europe have been preparing the ground for imperialism or colonization. In cultural imperialism, it is about culture. Now, of all cultural forms, Said finds the novel, especially the English novel, to be the most imperialist. And then he says that it is not for nothing that the first important English novel, Robinson Crusoe, is what it is all about. We read it as an adventure story, but with the insight from Said, we know, he says, it's all about a person setting up a colony in a non-European land and taking a slave, that is Robinson Crusoe and the Savage, Friday, Mr. Friday we read, and then teaching him and all these things. And Crusoe is the master and Friday is the slave. This master-slave dialectic, European and non-European. So what is the novel doing? Novel is legitimizing these practices that were already going on in the colonies, started in the colonies, and then preparing grounds for such future things. In the same way, he actually excavates a little more on the so-called great figures like Jane Austen or Charles Dickens, and shows that either they were directly imperialists or indirectly. And after, Said's research on Dickens, there had been further research, and now we are surprised to know that Dickens had in fact commented that we Indians, that is Orientals, we don't deserve to live. We should be wiped out as a race. If you just Google Dickens racism, you will find all those materials. Those are in his letters or observation. So a person who, when we studied our BA, for example, it was in a pre-theory period. So Dickens was celebrated as a great humanist who spoke about the suffering of the, industrial workers of England, for example, young orphans and all these things. But how do you relate it to the Dickens, who said that the all Orientals should be wiped out as a race, which includes both caste Hindus, Dalit women, everyone. He did not tolerate anyone. He was a shareholder in East India Company, Charles Dickens. At the same time, we read without knowing these things. How do we relate these things? That is the imperial attitude, the racist attitude. Here, but then again, Sai's view is of moderation. Unlike, say, many Indian movements, Sai does not say that burn Dickens. So our attitude is, if we find anything against women or against community, against, we burn the book and all. Sai is not for burning. It is for learning. So learning is more important than burning. And then those books should remain as testaments of how communities, castes, or races otherized, tortured, and perpetrated, different kinds of sufferings on other races, other communities, and other peoples. And at the same, so that is why side is not so much for the abolition of the canon. Canon, the word is there in the syllabus I checked. It basically means a selection of great books. Side is for rereading the canon. He admits, yes, as a writer, Dickens is great, Jane Austen is great, there's no question. But then their greatness also includes their racism. That is also there. So I think you have understood the point, that he does not say that don't read Dickens, burn Dickens, and he was a racist. No, read him, but read him also with the awareness that he was an imperialist and he helped creating or furthering the causes of imperialism. Of course, he also speaks about Kipling's scheme, of which we need not speak much because Kipling is visibly an imperialist. Everyone knows white man's burden and all. And Kipling was so frustrated when Rabindranath Tagore was awarded the Nobel Prize, because by then I think Kipling, no British was awarded Nobel Prize in literature. So Kipling got it only a few years later. Or here I may be slightly wrong. I forgot. Maybe 5 years before Tagore, Kipling was awarded the prize. But so he could not tolerate that a person from India that got Nobel Prize. So he called Tagore a Caliban. Caliban, again, a very important figure in post-colonialism, which we find in Shakespeare's The Tempest. So in a way, Shakespeare was a great person. It is slightly paradoxical. I'm speaking so many things about Europeans rather against them. Now I'm saying that Shakespeare was a great person. But this is the Saidian view. It is not a violent revision of history, nor a rejection of other cultures. Because then you will be, shutting your eyes and you're like those monkeys. No, I don't want anything European and all that. The Said's idea, though he does not formulate it that way, this is my thesis again, which was not there in my thesis, but my new thesis is like the idea of the Indian Renaissance, the so-called Indian Renaissance, for which people in cultural figures in Bombay, Pune, Calcutta, and other parts of India want. There's synthesis of whatever is best known and thought in both East and the West. It cannot be that everything from the West is bad. Yes, many things are bad, and imperialism is the gravest thing, racism. Just 3 months back, a black person was murdered on spot by American police. Though he had done something, against the law, but then it is not police's business to take away life. If at all, the court has to. But the kind of hatred that is there within the white race against this black people, and we can think about the, in many cases, similar such unfortunate occurring in India related to caste, gender, even, community. Couples are, killed for marrying within the same gotra or community. Oh my God, these are dangerous things. So critics like Aijaz Ahmed, who critics Said, they say, and other Marxist critics, they say that if you read Orientalism, then you will come with the idea that everything in Europe was bad, but not that. But actually, Said also knew that. So that's why you have to read the other works. And the last work, which was published after his death, unfortunately died early due to leukemia. His family had cancer history. Father and mother also died of cancer, Said's father and mother. So in 1991, leukemia was detected. And even after that, he wrote such a huge volume like Culture and Imperialism and many other works. And he died in 2003. 1 year after his death, Humanism and Democratic Criticism, that book was published, his last lectures. And there he says, yes, the crisis that the world is facing today, all these Arab-Israel fights and all this ecological crisis, everything included. We, people from humanities, have the most pivotal role to play because regarding caste oppression, colonial, it is our duty to make people aware more and more, not only to write in exams, get marks, or write papers and get promotions, but transformative changes in society. That is why Said was very much against theory, though he used theory, that it is encouraging a kind of priestcraft. So deconstructionists in a particular temple, feminists in a particular temple, and all people talking within each other only. Fortunately, in India, we don't have this American kind of excessive specialization. We have rather the opposite, the same person. Even I sometimes, ELT expert also, I don't know ELT though, post-colonial also, but those things in size view are good. He says criticism is an open inquiry. He says if you qualify anything, qualify criticism with any other term, that is anti-critical in such a brilliant concept. So if you say post-colonial, he was not in favor of that. Criticism. And if only anything, he said secular criticism. Secular, not so much in the sense of out of religion, which of course is there, but more in the sense of this outside these ghettos of deconstructionist group, queer theory group, feminist theory group. Then you look at only one aspect. Possibly he understood from the allegations against Orientalism also. So this critic part he wrote in a 1983 book, The World, the Text and the Critic. It's critic's job, the intellectual's job, to mediate the world and the text. And with that, possibly I will conclude this. But then in that book, Humanism and Democratic Criticism, his last book, he says, and for that, canon is very important. Select list of good books. You cannot read anything in everything. Life is limited. But then again, Said's idea of canon is very different from the idea of the canon of Harold Bloom, who in 1994 wrote this book, The Western Canon, where he chose only 26 authors from Europe as the only people who should be read. Only persons who should be read. Of course, we can say that he was writing in America and that he is justified and he named it Western Canon. But Said contests that very fact. He says in today's America, the Asians, Africans, Arab people, they are at least as many in number as the North Europeans in America, who were again not the original people. They had replaced the Red Indians, quote unquote. Red Indian is, sorry, not a kind of First Nations, actually. They had replaced and then displaced them. And then now so many people, so America cannot be only Western. So you take note of the Asian things also, take note of the Arabic things also. So definitely collection of good books may be there, has to be there, even if a practical isn't, but that cannot be only Western. You read Chinua Achebe, Ngugi wa Thiong'o. None of this Harold Bloom includes, who is a great Shakespearean critic and in general was a deconstructionist critic also. Now, Harold Bloom, you know what he has said, all these things with which I started, the feminist school, queer school, race school, he has called this school of resentment. That is, they are playing only blaming politics and they are not interested in studying literature, according to Bloom. And what is studying literature? That is like spiritual practice, as Said says it, going back to the great figures of the past, Milton, Shakespeare, and all that, repeatedly accept whatever is there, and then recite them, and then spread them, and all those kinds of oppression, as I said, in Dickens, or the perpetuation. So that cannot be. Right? Said's canon is an open thing. So for that, he gives a trope, contrapuntal, which is derived from, again, Western music. In that kind of music, I'm not a music expert though, but I have understood the idea in a different way, taking a cue from this Shehnai thing. When Shehnai is played, one person goes on playing a fixed note, generally two are there, and the other is a kind of variation. Sometimes of the same person keeps variating within different tones. So that is the idea. There should not be one tone. The monotony, the word which you used to mean boredom, comes from that one tone, ek sur. So monotony, it should be more like size canon mile sur mera tumhara, which was a very popular song in our school days. So bring in all kinds of literatures, good works from all places, and then read one against the other. Yes, you read Robinson Crusoe, but don't privilege this as the central text. You immediately read Chinua, you read Gogi Watyongo, yeah, you read any writer from India, Marathi writer, Bengali writer, and whatever, Manipuri writer, and all these things. So all should be read at the same level. Now, this was developed to a further extent by Gugi Wathiongo, who started writing before Said, and unfortunately, due to the accident of Said's early death due to leukemia, Gugi Wathiongo lives and continues to write. He elaborated this in a book called Global Ethics, written in 2013, which is more or less the kind of most latest book we can say of reading strategy in post-colonialism, global ethics. It is aware of globalization politics, which is Americanization. So the name globalization is not used, global ethics. You read every literature of the globe, sorry, as many as you can parallelly. So, and there is no center. Now in English departments, what happens even till date? In Bombay slightly liberated and in Pune, but in most of the places, even in India, 70 to 80% of our course in BA and MA are British literature. And against that 80%, say one or two papers, there's some grudging or rather apologetic inclusion of Indian writing in English and all that. Now, can you imagine when I did my MA from Ferguson College, where I learned a lot, of course, I guess. But even then under Pune University, I did not choose the Indian writing in English option. Now I think that how interesting is it that in India, even in 2000, Indian writing in English could be an option, just not compulsory. So that shows and I hope and I think this is same in many other places till date. If not, I would be very happy in many other places. So even in India, in the 21st century, if Indian English is optional, while doing MA in English, and nothing can show the pernicious effects of colonialism more than that. Now, of course, the very fact that I'm speaking to you in English, all of you, which is not the quote unquote mother tongue of me and possibly not, of any of you, it shows the continued relevance and continued power of, critiques of colonialism, power of colonialism and the relevance of critique of colonialism. So, I spoke mostly about Said. There are other figures, but then what I have said more or less would include them. Like gender angle was missing in Said and class angle. So Gayatri Spivak basically combined this both. And then can the subaltern speak is in a way, is a very intelligent, creative summary of Orientalism. The theme of Orientalism can also be can the subaltern speak. That is, we could not speak as Orientals. But of course, now we are speaking, inside says, but Gayatri still believes, I know women are further subaltern, gendered subaltern within the colony. The very basic thing is about the Sati thing, Sati system, which Ram Mohan actually abolished with the help of Benting. And we have celebrated. Gayatri problematizes it further by saying that there are two sides, pro-Sati and anti-Sati, but both were males. Both sides were males. Males speaking with or against males, European males and Indian males, or pro-Sati males and anti-Sati males, about what a women should do. That is again very interesting. But then here lies the problem of excessive theorization. Because if you read Gayatri, then it may appear that is she making an implicit case for continuation of the Sati, which finally reached her. And in one of the videos I watched on YouTube, she clarified that, no, I don't mean to say that. And abolition of the Sati was an unquestioned benefit of colonial rule. This is the term, unquestioned. She had to clarify, because when you problematize like this, bringing out these niceties and subtleties, your meaning may be very contrary to humanism. This is global humanism. Similarly, Bhabha also has extended side, is played on this part, that reading side, Orientalism, it seems that always colonizer and colonized are always at loggerheads. But no, there are points where they meet. That is Bhabha's idea of hybridity. And in fact, that also has been addressed in the first chapter of Said's later book, Culture and Imperialism. The very title of the chapter is overlapping territories, intertwined histories. You cannot separate European and our history and European and our space. Overlapping territories, intertwined histories, both space and time, globally connected. So I think I should stop here now. So many things are to be said, and then thank you very much. I would like to be, enriched by students' comments, etc.
Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed informative. Thank you so much. The forum is now open to ask questions. So if you have any questions, so kindly post it in the chat box.
Let them unmute and ask Afrin if they wish to directly interact instead of typing.
Okay. So
And those who would like to type, they may type it in the chat box.
okay, sure. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand and unmute yourself.
Yes, Zara, you want to ask something? If no question, then comments are also welcome. Okay, there seem to be no questions from. Yeah, there is one comment from E.T. Agarwal. She says this lecture was indeed helpful, and she thanks to the speakers and a bit to the organizer too. Okay, thank you, E.T. Yeah, definitely it was for TYBS students, and if they find it helpful, I think this program is more successful. And we really thank Dr. Jaydeep Chakrabarty sir for accepting this invitation and gracing this session, enlightening the crowd. So, Afrin, you may continue the proceeding if there are no questions as such.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. So if there are no questions, I would like to call Ms. Shifa Shikhalkar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, S.N.D.T College of Arts and S.C.B College of Commerce and Science for Women, Mumbai, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, Shifa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am here to present the vote of thanks to today's lecture on post-colonial theory today, issues, text, and reading. First and foremost, I would like to thank our guest, Dr. Chakrabarty sir, for enlightening us with all his knowledge. Today's lecture was full of knowledge and interesting things about the post-colonial theory, Orientalism, post in the post-colonialism, post in the post-modernism. It gave us a deep insight into the topic and also revealed some more interesting facts. This session was indeed really informative, and I'm pretty sure the precious knowledge that Dr. Jaydeep Chakrabarty sir gave us will definitely help our students in their studies and their future. Once again, I would like to thank you, sir, for taking out time from your busy schedule and enlightening us all. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank our principal, Dr. Rajendra Gurau, sir, for encouraging us to organize such lectures, such events. And a big thank you to our HOD, Dr. Pandurang Barkale, sir, for inviting Jaydeep, sir, to conduct it so well for us all. I would also like to thank Dr. Smita Bhatt for joining in along with other participants from other colleges and universities. I would also like to thank the scholars who have joined from Assam University, participants, students from MD Shah College, Malad, students from KJ Sumaya College, Ghatkopar, and also our DC English students for being good listeners to this session. Thank you to all the hands that helped work this session become successful. With this, I would like to end my speech here. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Shifa. Now, just a formality for the sake of attendance, we will take a group photo. Of course, it's online photo, so I would request everyone, if it is possible, to start the video so that we'll capture the screen, which will be documented as a attendance sort of thing. So if it is possible, do start the videos. I'll quickly capture it. Yes, thank you very much, friends. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Jaydeep, sir. We expect the same cooperation, same guidance from you every time whenever we'll need. Uh, I sincerely hope that you would bless us, you would motivate us, guide us uh, in a, for any sort of academic cause. We might rely on you for support and help. So for today's event, I really thank on behalf of my students and my department for making it for this session and really making some wonders happen. So heartfelt thanks to you from the college department and my personal behalf. And
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the invitation also. I'm glad. I wish all of you all the very best. Maybe
you had
someday we meet
yeah, in fact, I had
after the
assured
corona
that
post.
yes, we had a plan to. In fact, we after when we met for the first time online, that time I said that the next meeting would be offline, but this corona doesn't seem to end that soon, so we had to again make it
No,
online.
there is no post-colonial period yet. So post-colonial.
Yeah, it's still we are still in the process of it. So there doesn't seem the end is not in the sight, it seems.
Yeah.
So we really hope that the next meeting would be offline. Sincerely hope so. Okay. So everyone, thank you everyone for joining, for your participation. We request the same association should continue. Good day to everyone. Take care. Stay home. Stay safe.